back in April. I was wounded January 24, 45.
Right.
And this was like April, they were moving me back to the States. And still in that cast. And at about the height of the storm was so bad, the ship was rolling and pitching and doing all kinds of things. We couldn't stay in bed. I mean, people that couldn't hang on better than we could. So they had to come and actually tie us in bunks.
Mm.
You roll out the way it was pitching and twisting. So about the height of the storm, the captain came on the intercom, said, "This is your captain speaking. I regret to make the following announcement." I thought, oh my goodness. He's going to say every man for himself. I've got zero chance. I mean, this cast, it would fill up with water and I'd go straight to the bottom. So we just regret to make the following announcement. We've just received word that President Roosevelt had died. Mm. They notified the ships at sea. And I said, boy, that's bad, but hopefully I still got a chance to get
What date was that?
The 13th.
13th
of April. And then we came on back, and then we were at Charleston, South Carolina, and then to over into Georgia, where they had a orthopedic specialty.
Where in Georgia?
Augusta, just out of Augusta, Georgia.
Really? Awesome.
Yeah.
That's where I'm from
Yeah.
originally. I was
Is that
born
right?
and raised
Yeah.
in Augusta.
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
That's where I was in.
Fort Gordon?
I was trying to think of the name of the hospital. Oliver General.
Okay.
Augusta's where it was.
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
And I was there for a long time, and they redid the surgery, broke up the scar that originally just cut straight across like this, and messed up a lot of nerves and tendons and things. They went back in and did a Z-plaster where my leg bends like that, and did a really big job. I have a scar, as I say, from up here to down there. They put just clamps at first, so I've got big places that where the clamps were there before they did the other stitching. But they did a marvelous job at the orthopedic hospital at Oliver General. And that's where they took the major surgery people. And so after I got so I could walk up and around out of a wheelchair on crutches, and then they told me that I was well enough to get around. They said, "What do you plan to do?" And I said, "Go back to college, finish my education." And they said, "Well, there's no reason we can't discharge you earlier." So I got an earlier discharge to come back to NC State. And stayed on, finished, I got my master's, and stayed on for undergraduate, finished that, got my master's. And undergraduate 47, master's in 49, and then went to Cornell and to get my PhD, and I was there until February 52.
What were your degrees in? What fields?
Doctor of philosophy for that, but my specialty was food production.
Food production.
Horticulture.
Right.
Was a specialty.
That's what NC State was in the business of.
Yeah, they were. And so, as I say, that was very fortunate. But to tell you the thing I started with earlier, how you didn't talk about your experience, they signed me to an office in one of the buildings at Cornell with another student that was in the same major. And from Maine, I was from North Carolina originally, Zebulon, where I was born and raised. And we're very good friends, and he finished shortly after I did. I finished in 52, and he finished, I think, in 53, right after that. But we did all kinds of things together in terms of discussing work and every kind of things. But he never mentioned to me he had been in service, and I never mentioned to him I'd been in service. When I found it out was after the war, I went in and got these degrees and that. And as I told you, then it came that we moved back here. He moved back to Raleigh.
Oh, okay.
This friend that had been raised in Maine that was in service same time I was. And lo and behold, we were both in Rotary. And one day they were honoring veterans at the Rotary meeting, and they asked veterans to stand. Well, he stood and I stood. And I looked up and said, well, I didn't know you were in service. He didn't know I was in service. So we operated out of the same room for study for 3 years. I mean, that just tells you absolutely didn't talk about your experiences with that thing. And so since then, you know, but he had a little worse route than I did, really. He was actually captured, wounded and captured by the Germans and held by the Germans until we freed him, until the war was over.
Where was he? What area was he in? You know?
He was in infantry too. He was in college like I was, up in Maine. You know,
That's part of the battlefield.
Yeah. He was further north than where we were.
Yeah.
Yeah.
For sure.
Yeah.
Probably inside.
And he was in a German prison for. He was a bigger person than I am. He probably weighed maybe 200 or close to it. He was kind of like you, hefty, not thin like
yeah. Definitely not thin.
But by the time that he was freed, they weren't prisoners, but more than what, probably three or 4 months.
Right.
It happened during the Battle of the Bulge at that time, and then he was freed when Germans were.
One far from
he lost down to like 140.
Really?
Yeah, in that period of time.
Huh.
You know, and but he was wounded as well as not getting very good food.
Right.
Yeah. So, but that, I just illustrate that. I mean, by even people that have that much interaction, we never talked about it. Never talked about it to my family, anybody. I'd say 50 years when they celebrated the 50th anniversary of D-Day. Then there was so much good publicity about this, and people were asking, my grandchildren started asking questions, you know, weren't you in service? I said, yes. And then we started talking about it, you know, then. So, as I said, particularly when it's so bad, war like we experience, where you have people that are losing their feet, losing their lives, and that sort of thing, people you know and train with. It's tough, and you can't really explain that to anybody else. I had one buddy that was in my unit. He was a corporal, and after I was wounded, they made him sergeant to take over our unit. And I maintained contact with him until he died about 2 months ago. Very respected. We planned to get together, and you know, we just enjoyed getting together and talking about some of the humorous things as well as some of the bad things that happened. He was from Pennsylvania, and a Penn State person, where I went to NC State. He was a Pennsylvania State person, and very wonderful friend. As I said, anytime I went on patrol, I wanted him with me. You know what I mean? You want people that if you tell them, absolutely, you do not fire that rifle until I give you a signal to fire it. Because once you're in enemy territory and you fire a weapon, then immediately they know where you are.
Everybody's ears in on you.
Roll right in on you. And we went on patrol a number of times, reconnaissance. And, but some of the best reconnaissance people we had were French Moroccans that were attached to the French 7th Army. 7th Army. They were strange people. I mean, they came from Morocco. And of course, they'd never seen a lot of things that we had, like a little flashlight was the case in point.
Right.
They just turned it on and just stared at the light. They couldn't believe it. They could just cut it on and off, you know, like that. And then so consequently, they would trade anything to get one of those. And then after they had it, of course, they just left it on most of the time. Then the batteries would die, so they had to negotiate for batteries. But they were something else. I mean, but they could slip up on you so quietly. I could see how they could be very effective in penetrating the enemy territory. But I'd be on outpost sometime with a rifle, just listening carefully. It would snow. You can't walk around much without being obvious, right. You know, because of the crust. And when you break that, it would sound like animals walking in snow or something. You know? Right. Regardless of how quiet you try to be. And but they would go out, for the French first unit was attached to the same group we were, and they decided the best use for them was to send them out at night to do reconnaissance. And they were really good at that because they could move around so silently with those white robes, you know. You'd be on outposts like that, standing guard, and you just had a feeling, you know. Somebody was somewhere close to you that you couldn't see. And you try to move around carefully and look, it'd be one standing there grinning, and it would be very close to you. That you didn't think that would be possible on snow. But they could move that way, that easily. Well, apparently what they'd do too, and the way they kept a score, they would cut ears off of Germans. When they came upon two Germans, they'd be asleep in the foxhole. They'd slit one's throat, take him out without making any noise, and cut his ears off, and just leave the other one. I said, we'd ask, you know, why did you not kill the second one? Well, this one will never sleep again.
It's true.
No, he'll never. The other one don't get any good. He will not sleep again. They said.
Oh,
I think you're right about that.
Yeah, that'll just increase his combat effectiveness for
yeah,
sure.
I was gonna say, yeah, you know, but they could easily just slip up right on you, slit your throat before you even know they were anywhere around. But they were fascinating people, and I was fortunate, as I say, to have made it. We had a lot of friends that didn't make it, and a lot of good soldiers. And it was the luck of the draw, I think, that it's probably much better that I was not in the Air Corps. When reading this book, came down with something like pneumonia. I mean, you know, they were living in very bad conditions.
You said he was captured on the third day.
He was captured on the third day.
Oh,
And he was at the high with my daughter. I had one sister, and she died about 8 years ago. And she was a history major, you know. So I mean, she is the one that dug up a lot of the back facts and went to the courthouses and got the information, and so we could trace what he did and what, you know, his accomplishments and so forth.
What was his name?
He and his dad. His name was the same as mine.
Okay.
My name, I should say, is the same as his.
Okay.
And when I went to Point Lookout to visit the museum, so forth, my sister took me while she was still living, and we visited there where the prisoners were held, and they have a museum there.
Mm-hmm.
And she took me through the museum, talking to me about these things and so forth. The fact that he died in the hospital, there was a good physical record. I mean, if you just died on the battlefield and they buried them, you know, a lot of times they don't know exactly what happened to them.
Right.
But the records were good, and now they have a big monument at Point Lookout.
Yeah, I've been there.
You've been there?
My
Okay.
ancestor.
This name is on the monument, not the third. It's original. Yeah.
My ancestor was
Massey.
wounded at the first day, Gettysburg.
Yeah.
Taken to hospital in
26 or 6?
6. Taken to a hospital.
He was in the
in
47th.
Okay.
Yeah. Reggie.
Didn't the 47 boys doing the 47th? Aren't they part of the Legion?
Yeah.
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 And he was taken to a hospital and captured in the hospital and taken to Point Lookout.
Yeah.
And he died of pneumonia.
Yeah. That's what my grandfather died. Great grandfather.
They thought that was a bad place.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, but the fact he died, my sister said the reason that we could trace him easier was the fact that he died in the hospital. They kept better records on people. If you died in the hospital, that's different than just dying in your tent or something, you know. I mean, or trying to escape and somebody killed you or whatever. You can have that one if you want to
Appreciate
take that. Yeah. And we started another one too after we Tech. This is one that is going on and still being given scholarships in our name. And I have one in horticulture.
Oh, okay.
The department that I was in, you know. Yeah. Before I served as associate director of the experiment station and associate dean of the college. But my work